A giant Apache sister stood alone in the shadows, her powerful voice shaking as she whispered, "I haven't been loved in 6 months." That single sentence carried pain, silence, and a secret no one expected. She was feared by many, admired by some, but truly known by no one. Her size made her look unbreakable, yet her heart carried quiet cracks no one could see. Every step she took echoed with memories of warmth that once existed and suddenly vanished. The night listened as she stood still, hiding tears behind strength. Love had left without warning, leaving questions she never dared to ask. The wind brushed past her like a reminder of what she missed. Somewhere deep inside, hope struggled to breathe, afraid of being hurt again. She did not want sympathy, only understanding. This was not the story of a giant, but of a woman waiting to be seen before her loneliness consumed her completely. She was known as the strongest Apache sister in the land. People feared her height, her strength, and her silence, but no one knew what lived inside her heart. Behind her power was loneliness she never spoke about. She walked through the village like a legend carved from stone, yet her eyes carried stories of sleepless nights. Children stopped playing when she passed, and elders lowered their voices out of respect and feared, and no one dared to ask how she truly felt. She had fought battles others could not survive, but the hardest were lived inside her chest. Every sunrise reminded her of another day without warmth. Every sunset deepened the ache she hid behind pride. She was praised for her strength, but never asked if she was okay. In a world that saw her as unbreakable, she learned to suffer quietly. Her silence became her shield, and her loneliness became the price of being strong. Every night, she watched others laugh, love, and belong from a distance that felt farther than any battlefield she had crossed. She smiled in public, but cried when no one was around. And those tears fell silently onto the earth that had witnessed her victories and now witnessed her sorrow. Love had slowly disappeared from her life, not with noise or anger, but with quiet absence, and the silence hurt more than any battle she had survived. She sat beside the dying fire, staring into the embers as memories returned without permission, memories of voices that once spoke her name with care, of hands that once reached for hers without fear. The darkness around her felt heavier each night, as if it understood her pain and chose to stay. She wondered when strength had become a wall instead of protection, and when being needed had replaced being loved. The village slept peacefully while her thoughts remained restless, asking questions she never voiced. She had given loyalty without limits, stood firm when others fell, and protected those who now walked past her without noticing the weight she carried. Her heart beat slowly, not from weakness, but from exhaustion that no one acknowledged. She felt invisible despite her towering presence, and that truth cut deeper than any blade. The wind carried distant laughter, and each sound reminded her of what she lacked yet still desired. She questioned whether love feared her strength, or whether she had hidden herself too well behind silence. Time moved forward, but inside, her world remained frozen at the moment she realized she was alone. Her eyes closed briefly as she fought the urge to scream into the night, because even pain had learned to remain controlled. She remembered choosing duty over desire again and again, believing sacrifice would be rewarded, never imagining it would leave her empty. The stars above watched without judgment, offering light but no answers. She stood and walked slowly across the ground, each step echoing with thoughts she could not escape. She asked herself if anyone would notice her absence if she vanished before dawn, or if her legend mattered more than her existence. The single tear traced down her face, not from self-pity, but from the realization that strength had cost her connection. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself as she always did, because breaking was never an option she allowed. Yet deep inside, hope still lived quietly, refusing to die completely, waiting for something to change. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she could not continue living unseen. The night held her truth, and for the first time, she allowed herself to admit that surviving was not the same as living, and that even the strongest Apache sister deserved to be loved. One evening, the air felt heavier than usual, and she stepped away from the fire, letting the night wrap around her as if it already knew what she carried inside. Her breath slowed, her shoulders lowered, and for the first time she allowed her guard to slip. She leaned into the wind and whispered her truth softly, not to be heard, but because holding it inside had become unbearable. I haven't been loved in 6 months. The words left her lips trembling, and the moment they escaped, they felt both terrifying and freeing. That whisper carried regret for choices made, fear of remaining unseen, and fragile hope that had survived against all odds. She expected the wind to swallow it like everything else, yet something shifted around her, as if the world paused to listen. Her heart raced, not from danger, but from exposure. Because she had never spoken her weakness aloud. The trees rustled gently, not mocking, but would not explain. She straightened instinctively, ready to retreat into strength, but it was too late. She was no longer invisible. Footsteps moved carefully nearby, slow and unsure, belonging to someone she did not expect to see again. Her pulse echoed in her ears as memories rushed forward, moments she believed were buried forever. The figure stopped just far enough to respect her space, proving this was not an accident. She felt seen in a way that unsettled her. Because being noticed meant being vulnerable. She did not turn immediately, afraid of disappointment. Yet curiosity held her still. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken history and unresolved emotion. She realized that her whisper had crossed a distance greater than sound, and it had reached a heart that remembered her not as a legend, but as a woman. Strength urged her to walk away, but longing kept her rooted. She finally turned, meeting eyes that held neither fear nor judgment, only quiet understanding. In that instant, the night felt warmer, and the ache in her chest loosened slightly. She did not know why this person had returned or what they wanted, but she sensed this moment mattered. More words formed inside her, but she let them rest, because for once, she was not alone with her truth. The unexpected listener took a step closer, not invading, but offering presence. And that simple act carried more comfort than promises ever could. She realized that being heard did not erase pain, but it made it bearable. The wind continued moving around them, carrying her whisper away, yet leaving its impact behind. She stood tall, not because she had to, but because she chose to, feeling something unfamiliar rise within her. The quiet possibility emerged, fragile yet real, reminding her that even after long silence, connection could still find its way back to her heart. The stranger from her past stepped closer with careful patience, not to challenge her strength, but to understand the silence she carried, and that intention unsettled her more than any threat ever had. She felt confused, scared, and exposed, because vulnerability was unfamiliar territory for someone who had survived by control. Trust felt dangerous, sharp like a hidden blade, yet loneliness had already wounded her deeper than fear ever could. She searched the stranger's face for signs of judgment or pity, but found neither. Only quiet respect that made her chest tighten. Her instincts urged distance, but her heart resisted retreat. Knowing isolation had brought her to this moment, the stranger spoke softly, not with answers, but with listening, and that simple choice disarmed her defenses. She realized how rare it was for someone to stand before her without expecting protection or power. The air between them carried tension shaped by memories, left unresolved yet alive. She remembered why she had once pushed this person away, choosing duty over closeness, believing sacrifice was necessary. She wondered if time had changed anything, or if old wounds would reopen. She admitted nothing aloud, yet her eyes revealed questions she could not hide. The stranger waited, allowing silence to breathe, rather than forcing connection. That patience cracked something inside her she had guarded fiercely. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of every decision that had shaped her path. She understood that opening her heart again meant risking disappointment, but closing it forever meant certain emptiness. The night felt still, as if granting her space to decide. She thought of all the moments she had endured alone, convincing herself that independence was enough. She now saw how that belief had protected her body, but starved her spirit. The stranger shifted slightly, remaining grounded, proving presence did not require pressure. She felt tears threaten, but held them back, choosing honesty over collapse. She spoke cautiously, sharing fragments rather than the whole truth. Yet even those fragments felt like surrender. She noticed how carefully the Stranger listened, not interrupting, not correcting, not rushing. That attention eased the tightness in her chest. She recognized that understanding did not promise safety, but it offered possibility. She stepped closer, matching the distance offered, testing whether connection could exist without control. Her strength remained, but it softened, allowing warmth to surface. She realized trust was not blind faith, but a choice made moment by moment. She chose to remain, despite fear, despite uncertainty. Because being seen mattered more than being guarded, the stranger met her gaze steadily, acknowledging her courage without words. In that quiet exchange, she felt less alone than she had in months. She understood that loneliness had shaped her into stone, but understanding could shape her into something living. She did not know what would come next, or whether this path would hurt again, but she knew retreat would only repeat the same ending. As the night deepened, she stood there, between strength and softness, choosing connection not as weakness, but as survival. She finally spoke her pain out loud, her voice low and unsteady, not shaped by command or battle, but by honesty she had avoided for too long. She spoke not as a warrior, but as a woman who wanted to be seen, and the moment those words formed, the weight she carried began to surface. Tears replaced strength, sliding down her face without permission, and she did not stop them. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel everything she had buried beneath discipline and duty. She confessed how loneliness followed her, even in crowds, how silence greeted her after every victory, how being needed never meant being loved. Her chest tightened as memories poured out, not dramatic, but real, each one shaped by absence rather than loss. She admitted how exhausting it was to remain unbreakable, how heavy it felt to carry expectations without comfort. The stranger listened without interruption, holding space instead of solutions, and that presence gave her courage to continue. She spoke of nights spent questioning her worth, of mornings where strength felt like a costume she was forced to wear. She revealed how fear had taught her to hide tenderness, and how hiding had slowly erased joy. Her hands trembled slightly, yet she did not pull them back, because retreat no longer felt safe. She explained how she had learned to survive alone, but never learned how to live that way. Her tears fell freely now, not from weakness, but release, and each breath felt lighter than the last. She expected shame to follow, but it never came. Instead, she felt relief wash through her like warmth after cold seasons. The stranger's quiet attention reassured her that vulnerability was not a failure. She realized that allowing herself to feel did not undo her strength, it gave it meaning. She paused often, not searching for words, but gathering courage to continue. She acknowledged regret without bitterness, and fear without surrender. She spoke about hope she had tried to silence. Believing desire was a distraction, she admitted she missed being known, beyond reputation, and longed for connection that required no armor. The stranger remained steady, eyes filled with understanding that did not demand anything from her. That acceptance helped her stand taller, even while crying. She understood that emotions did not erase resilience. They revealed humanity. She wiped her tears slowly, not rushing to compose herself, because this moment deserved honesty. She felt raw, yet grounded, exposed, yet safe. She realized that silence had protected her from pain, but it had also kept her from healing. Speaking her truth changed something irreversible inside her. She felt present in her body, in her breath, in her voice. She no longer needed to be legendary in this moment. Only real. As the night listened quietly, she finished speaking, not because she had run out of words, but because she finally felt heard. She stood there, heart open, uncertain of what would follow, but certain that she would never return to numb survival again, knowing that allowing herself to feel was not an end, but the beginning of something she had long denied. The world did not change overnight, and she did not expect it to, because healing never followed command or speed, only honesty. Her heart slowly opened again, not suddenly, but through small moments that felt unfamiliar yet safe. She noticed how breathing felt easier when she no longer forced herself to be distant. She allowed presence without fear, learning that closeness did not always demand sacrifice. She learned that love does not disappear, it waits quietly until someone is ready to receive it. and that realization softened parts of her she thought were lost. She moved through her days with caution, but also with curiosity, testing what it meant to exist without armor. She still stood strong, but now strength included gentleness rather than silence. She listened more, to herself and to others, recognizing emotions instead of dismissing them. She allowed warmth to reach her without questioning whether she deserved it. The stranger remained nearby, not claiming space, but offering consistency, and that steadiness rebuilt trust naturally. She felt moments of doubt rise, and when they did, she faced them instead of retreating. She realized how often she had mistaken isolation for independence and endurance for peace. She learned that even the strongest souls need warmth, not as weakness, but as fuel. She began to smile without forcing it, and those smiles felt real. She slept more soundly, her thoughts no longer racing through regret. She discovered that opening her heart did not erase scars, it honored them. She allowed laughter to return without guilt and memories to surface without pain. She felt her presence shift in the world, less guarded, more grounded. She noticed how people responded differently, not to her strength, but to her authenticity. She no longer felt invisible despite standing tall. She felt connected to the ground beneath her feet and to the quiet hope within her chest. She understood that healing was not about forgetting the past, but about no longer living inside it. She made space for joy without waiting for permission. She accepted that love did not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes it was simply staying. She chose patience over fear, truth over silence, and connection over solitude. She felt proud not because she endured pain, but because she allowed herself to heal. She embraced vulnerability as a skill learned. Through courage, she felt warmth settle into her bones, steady and reassuring. She realized that needing others did not reduce her worth, it deepened her humanity. She carried her strength differently now, with openness instead of defense. She did not rush toward the future, but she no longer feared it. She trusted the process unfolding quietly within her. She stood in the present, fully aware, fully alive. She knew challenges would return, but she also knew she would not face them alone. She accepted that. Love arrived in its own time, and when it did, it asked only honesty. She felt complete not because she was whole again, but because she allowed herself to be. She looked ahead with calm resolve, knowing that surviving had brought her here, but choosing warmth would carry her forward. She no longer whispered her pain, because silence no longer owned her. She stood tall, healed, and hopeful, not as a legend carved from fear, but as a woman shaped by truth. The giant Apache sister realized something powerful. That being strong did not mean being unloved. It meant surviving long enough to recognize love when it finally returned. She understood that her scars were not signs of failure, but proof that her heart had endured what many could not. She felt peace settle within her, steady and earned, not borrowed from approval or fear. She no longer waited to be chosen, because she had already chosen herself. The past no longer defined her steps. It simply reminded her how far she had come. She carried strength with warmth now, and power with compassion. As dawn broke across the land, she walked forward without armor, knowing love was no longer something she chased, but something she allowed. The world did not bow to her strength, it welcomed her humanity, and that was enough to finally call this journey complete.